You think you know Jack and the Beanstalk. A poor boy, a handful of beans, a stalk that climbs into the clouds, and a giant waiting at the top. A bedtime story, harmless, innocent. But what if the tale was never meant for children at all? What if it began not in the nursery, but in the shadows of a world on the edge of collapse more than 4,000 years ago? Archaeologists call it the 4.2 kilo-year event, a time when entire civilizations withered under drought, famine, and fear. And in that same age, whispered in the flicker of firelight, a story was born. Not a fairy tale, but a ritual, a memory, a warning. A story of a boy who climbs a living pillar into another world where the dead guard treasures that no living man should touch. A story so old it predates kingdoms, alphabets, even the first temples of stone.
The spirits of the
forest it is a story that
watch
refuses
over
to
us.
die. Passed from tongue to tongue, from tribe to tribe, across collapsing empires and rising nations, reshaped 1,000 times but never forgotten. And if you listen closely, if you strip away the laughter and the nursery rhymes, you can still hear what it was always meant to say. The beanstalk is not a toy. The beans are not harmless. And the giant at the top is not a monster of fantasy, but a shadow of something far older, something that once stood in the earth taller than memory and still waiting for us to climb. Once upon a time or so, the story pretends there was a widow and her only son. They had nothing left, not even hope. Their last possession, a cow thin as bone, gave barely a trickle of milk. So the mother in despair told her boy to take the beast to market to trade life for life, a creature for a few coins of bread. But on the way, Jack met a stranger. He did not offer silver. He offered something stranger, darker. A handful of beans. Not just beans, he said. Magic. Seeds that could pierce the sky. Foolish or desperate, it makes no difference. Jack took them. When he returned, his mother's fury was sharp as winter. She cursed the beans, flung them into the night, and sent the boy to bed hungry. Yet hunger is often the doorway to visions. And by morning, the earth had torn itself open. From the soil coiled a stalk, twisting, swelling, climbing. It did not stop. It split clouds. It pierced the heavens. It was not a plant, but a pillar, green muscle wrapping the sky. And Jack, reckless, curious, half-starved and half-mad, began to climb. The village vanished into mist. The earth became a memory. Higher and higher until he found himself in another world, one that smelled of stone and blood. There beyond the clouds stood a castle larger than mountains. When he knocked, the door groaned like a coffin lid, and a woman tall as a tower answered. She saw the boy's hollow cheeks and let pity win. Bread, cheese, milk, all placed before him, though she warned, "Go leave, for my husband is a giant, and he eats boys whole." But Jack stayed. And when the footsteps came shaking the stones, the giant's shadow filled the hall. His voice was a growl of thunder. Fee-fee-fo-fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. And Jack hid, crouched in an oven, the flames like hungry eyes around him. The giant searched, grumbling, then turned to his table, counting gold with fingers thick as tree roots. When he slept, the boy crept out, stole a bag heavy with coins, and fled down the stalk. For a time, he and his mother lived well, but greed or hunger never stays quiet. Jack climbed again. Once more, the giant's wife took pity. Once more, the house trembled with her husband's steps. This time, Jack saw a hen, its feathers red gold, its beak dripping firelight, and from it came an egg of solid gold. He waited for slumber, then took it, his arms burning from its weight, and vanished down the stalk. But still it was not enough. A third climb, a third theft, and this time he found a harp, no mere instrument, but a living thing, its strings sighing like spirits, its voice rising like wind through a graveyard. When Jack touched it, the harp sang not for him but against him, crying out, "Help, master, a boy is stealing me." The giant awoke, his fury shaking the sky itself. Jack ran the harp shrieking in his arms down the twisting stalk clouds, splitting the heavens, roaring with every step the giant took in pursuit. On the ground, Jack called for his mother. She came with an axe. Stroke after stroke, the stalk screamed, split, bled green sap that smelled of rot and earth. The giant was halfway down when the final blow struck. With a sound like mountains breaking, the beanstalk snapped. The giant fell, plummeting, his roar echoing across fields, his body shattering as it struck the earth, and silence followed. Jack stood trembling, the harp still keening in his hands. The giant was dead. The stalk destroyed the path between worlds severed. And so the tale tells us, Jack and his mother lived happily ever after. But fairy tales lie. They always do. The story you just heard is only one mask, one version pressed flat onto paper in the 19th century. But if we peel back the layers, if we follow the echoes, we find that Jack's climb was never his alone. Even the chant we think of as nonsense, fee, fee, fo, fum, carries the dust of centuries. Shakespeare slipped it into King Lear around 1605, and even then he was quoting something ancient, something already worn with use. Writers of his age called it an old ogre's rhyme, a fragment of a spell spoken by giants long before ink touched parchment. Some have tried to dismiss it as nonsense syllables, the growl of a monster invented to frighten children. But others heard in it the broken bones of Gaelic words twisted across centuries, once meaning not a riddle, but a hunter's call. Behold, food good to eat enough to fill my hunger. In that version, the giant is not a clown, but a predator, and the boy in his house is not a thief, but prey. And if we look wider, the giant is everywhere. In the Bible, the shepherd David slays Goliath, a figure taller than towers, a threat to the people of Israel. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus blinds Polyphemus the Cyclops who devours men raw his cave, echoing with screams. In Norse myth, the gods themselves wrestle endlessly with the Jotnar primeval giants, older than the world of men, beings of frost and fire whose blood once flooded the earth. Always the same pattern giants as the first inhabitants, the primal owners of the land, demonized, defeated, reduced to shadows by the stories of those who came after. Which forces us to ask, who is Jack really? He climbs into a world not his, steals what is not his, and kills its guardian. He is not savior, not innocent, but intruder. A colonizer in miniature raiding a realm that preceded him, destroying its keeper, cutting down the bridge to ensure no return. And yet the tale survived, passed along as if it held more than theft, more than blood. It is not only England's tale. In Italy and Scandinavia, in India, fragments of the same pattern appear: a poor youth, a monstrous guardian, a theft from another world. Different faces, same bones. Folklorists gave it a name, ATU 328, the boy who stole the ogre's treasure. A motif, they said. But to call it a motif is to drain it of its pulse. Better to see it for what it is, a recurring dream humanity cannot stop dreaming. A child climbs, a guardian waits, and something sacred is stolen. From England to Greece, from Norse fjords to Vedic hymns, the climb and the theft return like a scar we keep touching, like a secret we cannot bury.
And as the moon rose
For centuries,
high
Jack's
above the
tale
ancient
seemed
woods,
like just another
a chill
fireside
wind
fable, a
swept
scrap
through
of
the village,
imagination passed
bringing
along to keep children quiet. But then, in 2016, something remarkable happened. Folklorists turned their tools not to bones or ruins, but to stories. They treated tales the way biologists treat species, mapping them like a family tree, tracing mutations, branches, and shared ancestors. And when they tested Jack's story, what they found was astonishing. The tale of a boy who climbs into another world, who steals from a monstrous guardian, who escapes with treasure. It did not begin in England or even in medieval Europe. It began much earlier. Their analysis traced it back over 4 millennia to a vanished people on the steppes between the Black Sea and the Caspian, a people we now call the Proto-Indo-Europeans. These were not kings or scribes. They left no marble temples, no carved tablets. They left almost nothing at all. Semi-nomadic herders drifting with their flocks across the endless grasslands, they spoke a language that would fracture into Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Norse, Celtic. A tongue that would become the very roots of Europe and Asia, but beyond words they left whispers. Burial mounds, kurgans, low hills of earth where their dead were laid with weapons and ornaments, fragments of pottery, tokens of status. The wind tore their tents away, the centuries swallowed their bones, yet somehow their stories survived. Stories that outlived stone, outlived cities, outlived even memory. And among those stories was this one, the boy and the giant, the theft of the otherworld's treasure. Jack's tale, hidden in plain sight, is not a nursery rhyme at all, but a relic, a fossil of myth carried forward in mouths and minds for over 4,000 years. It is one of the last bridges still standing to that forgotten age when words were stronger than walls and stories were the only monuments a people could raise against oblivion. And if this is true, then every time we whisper Jack's name, every time we picture him climbing through the mist, we are repeating a ritual older than writing itself, a ritual first spoken on grasslands that are now silent where only the earth remembers. The tale insists it is simple, just beans, just a stalk, just a giant. But nothing in folklore is ever simple. Begin with the beans. To us they are food, humble seeds. But in the ancient world, beans were never only food. In Greece, the followers of Pythagoras would not touch them, would not even breathe upon their flowers. They believed each bean was a vessel, a tiny prison of souls. Split a bean open and you might glimpse the curled form of a spirit waiting to be born again. Even their gas, they whispered, was the breath of the dead leaving the body. To trade a cow. The last source of milk and life for beans is not folly, it is ritual. It is a bargain of life for death. From those seeds bursts the beanstalk, not a plant but a column, a world tree, a vertical bridge between realms. Many cultures give it a name. Yggdrasil in Norse lands, the Kaba tree of the Maya, the Ashvatha of India. Always the same vision, roots in one world, branches in another, a living ladder binding the living to the divine or the living to the dead. Jack climbs, but he does not ascend alone. He follows the path of every soul that ever sought to pierce the veil, and at the summit waits the giant. Is he villain, or is he guardian? Myth is clear. Treasures of the otherworld are never unguarded. Hades sits in the Greek underworld, Yama in the Hindu, the lords of the Tuonela in Finnish song. Always a keeper, vast and terrible, whose purpose is not cruelty but boundary. He does not hunt Jack for sport. He smells him because the scent of the living does not belong in the land of the dead, and the treasures Jack steals, are they wealth or are they more? The bag of gold, the hen of endless eggs, the harp that sings by itself. These are not riches, they are symbols, sustenance without end, music that never dies, wealth that cannot be exhausted. They are eternity dressed as objects, immortality in disguise. The harp's song is not music, it is the voice of the soul itself crying out as Jack carries it away, torn from its rightful place. And when Jack cuts the stalk, it is not just an act of desperation, it is severance. He does not merely slay a giant, he severs the bond between worlds, destroys the bridge that once bound living and dead. The story pretends he lives happily ever after. But the deeper truth is this: Jack has broken a covenant older than kingdoms. He has taken what was never meant for him, and in the silence that follows, the world below must bear the weight of that theft. What then is the truth behind Jack's climb? Strip away the laughter, the nursery glow, and the story whispers something darker. It is not about greed, nor even about courage. It is about the human impulse to cross boundaries, to climb where we are forbidden, to seize what was never meant for us. Jack is every one of us, restless, hungry, unsatisfied with the world as it is. He looks at the ground and sees famine. He looks at the sky and imagines more. And so he climbs, even knowing what waits above. But every climb has a cost. The giant is not simply a monster, but the weight of consequence, the law that says what belongs to one realm cannot be stolen by another. And yet we steal anyway. We steal fire like Prometheus. We steal wisdom like Odin when he drank the mead of poetry from the land of giants. We steal life itself, chiseling into genomes, splitting atoms, reaching beyond the sky into the black of space. Humanity is Jack again and again. Reckless, brilliant, haunted. Always climbing, always cutting down the bridge behind us, pretending it was only a dream. Perhaps that is why the story survives, because it is not about one boy, but about all of us. It tells us that survival does not come from obedience, but from trespass, from daring to take what even the gods tried to withhold. But it also warns every theft severs something. Every climb leaves a wound. The world tree shudders, the bond between realms is broken, and what we carry down is never as simple as gold or song. It is a burden, a knowledge, a debt. Maybe the tale survived not because it comforts, but because it accuses. Every time we repeat it, we are reminded that we are creatures of theft, that our progress is built on broken stalks and fallen giants. And perhaps the real question is not whether Jack was right or wrong, but whether we can ever stop climbing, or whether the urge to trespass is the very thing that makes us human. So the tale of Jack and the Beanstalk is not a nursery rhyme at all, but a memory more than 4,000 years old. A ritual of death and trespass disguised as a bedtime story. It survived because we are still climbing, still stealing, still cutting the bridges behind us. And if one child's tale can carry the voice of the dead for millennia, what other stories are hiding the same shadows? What if Little Red Riding Hood was never about a wolf, but about something that wore a wolf's skin to mask its hunger? What if the Pied Piper was not a man at all, but a figure who claimed the souls of children in payment for an ancient debt? How many of the tales we call harmless are only masks for rituals we have forgotten? Warnings we refuse to hear. The stalk may be cut, the giant may be gone, but the climb is not over. We are still on it. And the question that lingers whispering through every story we tell is this: when we reach the top again, what waits for us this time?